Hello and welcome. This is going to be the TBRC Villain build video. TBRC is introducing the new Villain Racewing. So I will be walking you through step by step of how to build this strong and light so everybody can copy this and have pretty much the exact same build across the board. First step I'm going to do, as you can see, I've already glued the wing together. I use welders to do the regular gluing. First step we're going to do is we're going to draw out for doing all the spar work, and then we're going to install the spars. I've taken the liberty of doing up a drawing. It's a rough draft drawing, but it's all the measurements that I did for doing the first model that I've done, and it came out very, very good, so replicating that should be pretty easy. First step I'm going to do, I need to make a cutout for the motor mount. We're going to do a motor mount that mounts on the bottom, here and bends upward, and we'll do an inboard mount of the motor. You can choose to do outboard, but I like to do inboard. That way brings the center of gravity further forward. It'll be much easier to get CG. So I like to make a little pocket here. So I'm going to draw that out first. This will not be a full cutout. It's only going to be a slice down the middle. And then we'll cut out about halfway thick, the thickness of this in the back, in order to make this little pocket. So let me draw that out first. We take a measurement of 1 5/8 from the trailing edge here. And I've already pre-marked this, so it'll be much easier for me to draw this out. And the width of this pocket is going to be 1 1/8 inches. So once I draw this out, I'll be cutting it out later, but I need to mark this such that when I do my cross spars, I know where to place them so that they don't interact with where that motor pocket is. On the bottom, won't make a difference because we won't be cutting this pocket all the way through. I'll just go straight across. But let's draw out the top since that's the more intricate of the two sides. Okay, going 1 1/4 inches off the leading edge, we're going to draw all the way to the edges. So we're going to go 1 1/4 inches. One and a quarter. We're going to cross over the blunt area, the glue line on the blunt area, by about a 1/2 inch, because we'll be running into that area as well. From here, we're going to do the cross spar, going from a measurement of 1 3/4 of an inch up from the trailing edge, and then we'll put another one a 1/2 inch away from that. So we're looking at 1 3/4 inches and 2 1/4 inches. I've already pre-marked it, so I'm going to make those lines right now. Now, it's important to note that this line will cross over the leading edge spars. You'll want these spars to cross over slightly by about 1/4 of an inch, maybe 1/8 of an inch. It doesn't need to be quite that much of a crossover, but it needs to cross over. The reason why I'm crossing over the spars, and you're going to see that take place throughout this build, is because when you have that crossover, it adds additional strength and ties together your spars so that there's no breakages right at the foam where the spars end. And we'll be cutting pretty deep into these, maybe a little bit deeper than what you might typically do on a wing build. We'll be cutting a little bit deeper so you can sink in spars deep. These cross spars will be sunk in deep, and then these outer leading edge spars will lay on top of them. Once you glue that all in, it ties it all together. All right, so we have our mid section. Now we're going to do I'm going to draw out for a battery pocket and a spar that's going to run through in that area as well. Our battery pocket's going to start 2 inches back from the leading edge. So we'll go 2 inches back and mark 2 inches back. And we'll run to a length of 5 5/8, which is roughly going to come right to where the spars cross over, right to these areas where the spars are. If I measure that out, that is just about 5 5/8. And I'll get it kind of even here. We'll mark it and draw it out. And then what's going to be 2 inches deep from there. So we'll go back 2 inches and we'll mark again. 2 inches. 2 inches. Okay, so I want to make this pocket square, so I'm using an L bracket just so I can mark this in the proper way. Okay. So our battery pocket's cut. Now we're just going to make another spar that runs across right behind it to add that mid-level strength. This doesn't have to be exact, but it gives you want to save as much room in this area because this is where you're going to be mounting electronics. We're going to sink in an ESC, probably be putting in an ROSD to give him some telemetry data. It's always nice to have something like that on our wings. So we want to leave a little bit of area also to mount our servos. So this spar will go as close to the rear of the pocket as possible, but leave a little bit of foam. And again, we'll do a crossover so we have that tie together of all the spars. Okay? Gives you an idea how that looks. Now, one last set of spars. In order to strengthen this area out here, these spars will do a fine job, but we want to add another spar on both sides right in this area. This is kind of freehand, but the measurement that I use is I go 2 inches from the outer part. So I'll mark 2 inches from the previous spar, that leading edge spar. I'll do that on both sides. And that's going to locate me on the edges. Now I'm going to place this next one so that this spar runs right down and again crosses over to add that strength again, crosses over these mid-level spars. I'm only going to go across one spar though. I don't want to encroach into this area where the electronics is going to be. So I'm going to go midway between the two spars up here and go all the way down. And that's going to add extra rigidity to that wing. And we'll do that on both sides, top and bottom. So let me get a better view of that. All right. There we go. So that's what our top sparring is going to look like. Seems like a lot, but believe me, this will make this thing stiff as a board once it's done. So let's do the bottom as well. We'll be using the same measurements for the leading edge, the middle, and the battery box area. So again, 1 1/4. Quarter. 1 1/4. Additionally, on this, we're going to cross over in the middle of the blunt area to add some strength also. There'll be an extra spar there. You can do it on the top as well, but I don't usually choose to do it because you're going to be mounting a camera or GoPro or something like that if you choose, and you don't want a spar to be right in the middle of where you might want to mount your gear. So off of the leading edge, we're going to go in about, let's say, 1.5 inches off of the leading edge for this one. 1.5 inches. And we're going to cross over again, so again, we'll have that tie together. 1.5 inches. All right, so we did the leading edge and a cross member that goes through the front. We're going to do the mid-level crosses right through the back. Unlike the top side, we're going to go closer to this trailing edge because we have more room here now. So I'm going to mark 1/2 inch from the trailing edge and 1 inch from the trailing edge. Those are going to be two spars that run along. So 1/2 inch and 1 inch. And again, we're going to draw these so they cross over the leading edge spars.
So even when you're doing stuff like this, like in your head or whatever, think out loud, like you put the, like whatever.
I want to be able to look and get these spars even though I marked it. I wasn't quite sure that I'd have them nice and spaced equally, so there we go with those. So now, again, we know where our battery box is going to be, and the back edge of the battery box is going to be 2 inches plus an additional 2 inches, so 4 inches off of the leading edge, and we'll want to go just behind it. So we'll be looking to go 4 1/4 inches off of the nose so that I can have a spar that runs just behind the battery box that's going to be installed. And again, I'm going to cross over so everything's uniform. There we go. So now we go out to the edges and we do our 2-inch mark so we can do our outer spar, our trailing edge spar on the wing. 2 inches. 2 inches. And again, this part we're going to freehand, but I want to cross over. This time I'm going to, on the top side, I only crossed over the trailing edge, the rearmost one. This one I'm going to cross over both of them. And I kind of want to try to stay away from it, from being as close to this exit, to this area here. I'm going to be cutting away for the to allow the prop clearance, but I want to be able to see it a little better. So let's go something like this. And we only need to cross over about 1/2 inch over top of the forwardmost one this time. Like that. Let's go there. This is going to make it really nice and strong. All right, so there we go. We have all our spars drawn out. So now what we can do is cut our slots and install our spars. I will wait to cut out the battery box, but this is going to be unique. I'm going to cut all the way through, and then we're going to make, so this will be a completely through pocket, and then on the bottom we'll be gluing in an ABS, a custom piece ABS floor, so that your battery will sit right on that, and it'll be nice and neat for putting in Velcro or whatever to hold in the battery. Much better than trying to do the foam, and it'll be much stronger, especially for impacts to the nose or anything like that that might happen. You'll have a lot more strength by doing that with the ABS pocket. We're going to start out fresh hobby knife, nice sharp blade. We're going to cut in, and I'm going to make these not super deep, but pretty deep. Deep enough that I know that 2mm round spar that I'm going to be using is going to be able to overlap each other in all these spots that it needs to overlap. So let's go ahead and get started. Okay, as I cut these, the way that I set my depth, I've seen enough videos and seen other builders build, but a lot of them will just cut in without really mentioning what they're thinking. I'm going to tell you that what I usually do is I'll set a little bit of length here, depending on what kind of slot I'm cutting for spars. But for me, for this one, I want to go kind of deep. So you can see I'm probably about 3 clicks out from once the blade is exposed. Now, I could go straight down, but I don't want to go that deep. So I'm going to give it an angle such that when this edge touches the foam, I can adjust my angle to give me the right kind of cut for the depth I'm looking for. And I'll usually go more than once so that I know that I cut through nice and clean, and there's not going to be any high spots or low spots. And with a sharp blade, this will cut through really nice. So again, I'll go back and I'll trace my route again just to make sure I got a nice clean cut. And as you can see, that edge of the actual knife holder is touching the foam as I do my cut. So again, let's go from here. I'll dig in and I'll trace along. And I'll just hold the angle and let the foam blade, the edge of the blade holder, dictate how deep I go. And again, over the same path. Okay. Dig in and then trace. Follow your line. Now this whole time I'm thinking about, am I going to put the leading edge one down deep or the cross ones down deep and put the leading edge over top? I'm not really sure just yet. I'm pretty sure that I will put these cross ones in first and then lay the leading edge on top. So I need to make sure these cross ones are deep enough that they go in, and that I can, once they're in, I'll be able to have enough to lay the other leading edge ones on top of it. And again, I always go through twice just to make sure I got a nice clean cut there. All right. This TBRC foam is pretty dense. So if you have a nice sharp knife, it cuts through nice. If you do not, you kind of gouge up this foam pretty bad. All right, so those are all cut. Let me do this last one behind the battery box. There. And there. All right, that's our bottom all cut. Now we're going to cut the top. That way when I go to put the spars in, we're going to spar it from the bottom, get it all set. Then we're going to flip it over, install the top ones, and then we're going to weight this down and leave it overnight so that it all cures up with all the spars and everything will be nice and true. It's always good to build on a nice solid base, a good flat tabletop. This is actually marble, so I have a nice straight solid base to actually build on. Okay, we're going to cut the top side now and cut our routes for our spars to be installed. And again, I just dig in and let the blade holder set against the foam, set my angle, and just trace through. And I've set the depth of the blade such that it gives me pretty much what I'm looking for to be able to do crossover. So I can cross those spars over. All right. Let's do another one. And we'll go back again. I usually like to go through twice. All right. And the forwardmost one. And one more time. All right. And our leading edge. Now usually the leading edge, it would be easy for me just to cut straight in, like straight vertical, but usually because the roll of the front leading edge has that airfoil, that roll off, I will try to get 90 degrees to what that angle is right there. So I actually be leaning the blade slightly as I cut in for these. That way the spar goes in nice and straight to the leading edge. I don't know how important it is, but to me, it seems like everything should be nice and square. So it only makes sense to do it with that in mind. Right. And our last one, just to make sure it's nice and clear. Okay, good. So all our spars are cut out. We're ready to start gluing in spars. Okay, and we're back. Here's where we're going to start installing spars. But before we do that, we need to trim spars to the lengths that we need. What I have here is 2mm fiberglass spar that we're going to be laying in all these spots. And we're going to be, I have 6 spars. It's going to take approximately 6 spars to do this. You'll see a little bit more here, but this will be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. But these shorter ones will be excess of what we don't use. These here, this one here will be shorter pieces, the pieces that are the overrun. What I want to do first though is I want to lay one of these in and see if my depth is good for anywhere where I have a crossover. So what I'm going to do real quick here is just wedge one of these in here temporarily and then take another spar and see that my depth is good for doing the crossover. And as you can see, the first one's buried in there nice. The second one is beautifully in there nice. So once you glue this all up, this will make an excellent joint for strength here, and everything will still be nice and flush. So with that being said, I can take these out and we're going to trim these all to length and then take them out one at a time and install them. And what I usually like to do is I like to place it in. These are going to be the ones that are going to be put in first, so let me go ahead and do those. I'll place it in here where it goes, and then I'll go out to the edge and clip based on my mark. All right? We'll do the next one. Wedge it in, measure my length, and clip for the length. Hold on to your spares because you may need those for something else, even areas where you might want to add additional strength. I'm going to go in. We're going to go a little bit over. I usually don't cut it right to length. I usually go a little bit past it and trim this all up afterwards once the glue is all cured. And as you can see, we have plenty of long pieces, more than enough to do an area, this particular spar. So let's just go ahead and put that in here. Why not? Again, a little bit of overlap. Let's put this one. It looks gonna look a little bit funky with stuff sticking out everywhere, but don't worry. It's gonna look nice when it's all done. Will that one fit? Look at that. It's perfect. That one has nice overlap also. So I didn't even need the 6th one. And we'll do the cross member right up front. Okay, so there's all of our spars. It's going to be a little messy, so you will need a rag. I use welders to do all my spar work. I like the way that it sets. It's very strong when it's all done, has some flexibility, which I really like. And the reason why I like using this over some of the other ones is because the applicator allows me to really press in and get the glue in. And I want to press the glue in such that it starts to flow and it just bubbles over outside just by a little bit. That way I know that I've got enough glue in there that it's going to populate and fill all of these. Some guys will actually take and sand their spars. I found that with the welders it holds pretty good without it, really good without it, so I'm not going to go and do that part. Alright, so with all the spars in place, as they are going to be installed, I want to remove them, but I want to keep in mind where I removed them from and remove as few as possible. So the leading edge ones and these trailing edge ones are going to be the last ones to go in. The cross ones are going to go in first. These leading edge and trailing edge are going to lay on top. So I'm going to remove those but leave them in an orientation that I'll know where to reinstall them. So I'm going to set these off to the side like this. And we're going to start from the top. And I'm just going to install, just glue. I have my little thing here where I'll roll up my glue nozzle, and I'll loosen this so the air comes out and I can get this nice and good so I can use as much glue out of here as possible. And I'm going to squeeze in till I get just a little bit of overflow coming out. See that little bit of overflow? There we go. Then we're going to install our spar. And I'm going to use a small piece of spar to press in. What's even better is if you use a popsicle stick. That works even better. I just don't happen to have any right now. And then I will wipe this just to make sure I got all the excess off, or as much excess as possible. Alright, we're going to do this mid-level one. And the whole time I'm thinking, let me just get enough glue in here to just start to pop out of the top of the seam. That way I know I have enough. And don't worry about this drying too quickly. That's what I like about the welders. It takes several minutes before it really starts to get to a point where you're going to feel like I'm running out of time. I need to get these things installed. Just move at a decent pace and you'll get them in there in more than enough time. And again, these ones up in the front, in the middle, and in the back, you want to press them down in here so that you can put the other spars on top. You need to have enough space to be able to put these in and lay the other ones over top of them. And you can feel it go down in there. That's good. Okay, let's get that spar. All right, so that's that one. That one's going to go in. Just be careful when you get to the points where the cuts are for these crossovers. You don't want to damage the foam. So usually I try to stop just a little bit short. The glue will fill the pockets to be able to get into these spots. But we want to maintain it as much as possible. Here's a little trick I do. Once your tube gets to be a little bit squished in there, put the cap back on, press from the bottom, sort of straighten out your tube. See how that fills right up? Then roll it up. And then just release the cap a little to let the air out. And you'll hear it go pop. And you're good to go. And you got a nice fresh looking tube. Wiggle these in. And again, press in as much as you can to get these in and deep. And wipe your excess. Okay, moving right along. Let's get this one in. Just enough to get it to pop out, the glue just to come through just a little. Good. Okay, I'm going to grab this last spar and I'm going to install it right here in this spot. Trim it to the right length. And then do our install. We're going to wedge this in. Just give it a nice little jiggle back and forth and you'll feel it seat right in there. Press it down in there so you know you have enough depth to have it cross over properly. All these spots where it's going to cross over, especially right in here. These spots tend to want to resist, and the foam's a little thin, so just be a little careful back there. Good. Wipe off your excess. This will all be sanded and nice when we get done. Good. Alright, so let's lay over top our leading edge and trailing edge spars. We're just going to press in enough to let some of this overflow. Careful in these spots where the crossovers are, because the foam will start to get away from you a little if you're not careful. This was our leading edge, this is our trailing edge, so I don't want to get them confused. And just wiggle these in. And as you can see, fits right over top, really nice. Good. Press these in too. Make sure they're in there nicely. Good. Wipe off our excess. And we're trying to work at a pace that we know we can get this done before this really starts setting up, but we have plenty of time here. This glue works well. Some like to use Gorilla Glue. It works really good too. I find that it's a bit messier though because it does its foaming action and you have a lot of cleanup after. The welders, you don't have that. Just wiggle these in. Again, a little bit of overlap out of the edge. Just make sure you got it in there nice and square and at a good depth. And you'll see the foam start to wrap back around the spar. It doesn't leave too big of a gap here. You want that glue to fill up that gap and leave a minimal area here. Okay. So we'll go leading edge. Our leading edge spar. Pull that all the way in. Wipe away our excess. Okay, our last spar on the bottom. Just make sure we got enough glue in here to make a nice clean seal. And our trailing edge spar. Give it a nice wiggle in there. Alright, so we got all the spars in. Let's clear our table here real quick. Top and bottom. And we're going to weight this down with some barbells so that it goes nice and flat in contour with the table. So what I use are barbells. Some people use batteries. Some people use books. I like these because there's nothing better than this kind of weight. So in the big parts, we're going to weigh these down evenly. Get the heavy weights up here in the front. And put the lighter ones out on the edges. Now, this is a very important part that I want to stress. And perhaps, let me take these off real quick so I can show you. Along this trailing edge is very important. You don't want one side higher than the other. And depending on how you put your weight on it, you can see that it can easily kind of twist, if you can see that in the camera. You want to have these edges, this trailing edge, equal so that you don't have any twist in your wing. You want to make sure this entire thing is as true as you can possibly have it. So what we're going to do is we're going to put something under here to shim this so that we have an equal gap all the way along, so when we put our weights on, we'll know we'll maintain that gap. Okay, as I mentioned just a few minutes ago, we want to be able to make this gap in the back equal so that our trailing edge and our entire wing as we weight this ends up being true. It just doesn't have any twist to it. So actually, I'm going to use the Elevon stock that comes with the kit. I'm going to wedge this. I'm going to place the wing nicely so it's on the table evenly. And I'm going to run this Elevon narrow edge here, wide edge here. I'm going to run this in equally on both sides. That way I can ensure that both of these are at the same height. I'll even touch these together here. And I'm going to go in about halfway up the cord. Right there near the middle should be where the line, where the trailing edge is. So we're going to run these up. Halfway, halfway. So they're nice and even. So here I know that when I weight this down, these are going to be at the same height, both top and bottom, side to side. Oh, let me do that again. There's a little slip. Good. And we're going to weight this. Making sure we don't move anything. And weight. Again, I'm using the heavy weights up front. And we can even rotate these back. I want to kind of get this on here so the weight is evenly distributed as much as possible. And you can touch this and see, are they lifting? Are they down there nice and solid? And actually, I'm going to move this back a little. I don't want to lift this edge. So I'm going to go maybe a 1/2 inch in. That looks to be better. And I don't want that lifting. Go about a 1/2 inch in. And that'll give me a nice, steady weighting. Good. All right. See, so that part's lifting a little right there. So I actually need to move a little weight there. So let's move this down, see if I can add another one here. We'll move that up. But I think it's pretty vital that you have these trailing edges right, because you want the wing to fly straight once you get it all together. You don't want to have to add trim if you don't have to. You want it's foam, so it's never going to be perfect, but you want to try your best to get it perfect if you can. And actually, I'm going to weight these both identical. So let's move this out and put that there. There we go. And as you can see, nothing's moving. It's all weighted to where when this is cured, it's all going to be identical. All right, there we go. Let this set overnight, and when we come back tomorrow or the next day, take all the weight off, and this wing should be completely straight and true and even everywhere, and we can go on to our next steps.